I'm still laughing just thinking about it. As much as I know how pretentious this probably sounds, it's really rare for me to allow myself to get genuinely excited for a new movie. Typically, I like to go into a movie with low expectations, so I am approaching it from something like a blank slate perspective. If the movie turns out to be fine or so-so, then I'm not terribly disappointed. And if the movie turns out to be something really great or even just pretty good, then I'm much more satisfied than if I had hoped that it would be great from the start and it didn't meet those expectations. Maybe that makes me a cynical little fucking asshole.
It's a condition called being a cynical asshole.
But that's just the way it is for me. Friendship with Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd seemed to defy that wall that I have up for new movies, and it found a way to get my hopes up and get my excitement up. Because I'm such a huge fan of I Think You Should Leave, Tim Robinson's Netflix show, there was something undeniably enticing about the idea of taking that chaotic, frantic, cringe, absurd style of comedy that works so well in bite-sized segments and translating that to a full-length feature. A part of me remains skeptical, as usual, but some naive part of me couldn't help but hope that this would end up being the funniest movie I've ever seen. Obviously, no movie can live up to an expectation like that, but there's something that feels good about letting go of that skepticism a little bit and just really genuinely being excited for something that you strongly feel like you can predict is going to really work for you. That experiment of taking the style of I Think You Should Leave and translating it into a full-length feature did ultimately wind up being successful. There's this one joke in particular that worked so well for me. I'm still laughing just thinking about it. Even after the rest of the audience kind of died down with their laughter, I kept on giggling and laughing, and I had to like take my hoodie in my lap and just like cover my face because I just couldn't help myself from fucking laughing. It's still making me laugh just thinking about it, talking to my camera. So it's going to be an all-timer for me. The movie is obviously full of one-liners and jokes and punchlines. Not all of them end up landing for me as much as some of the other ones do, but they all contribute to keeping a certain momentum. But something that I think is interesting about the style of comedy that's employed by the show and by this movie is that it doesn't always wind up being funny while you're watching it. And I know that sounds maybe kind of silly, and some people have criticized me when I explain that, saying a comedic show or movie should be funny while you're watching it. But for me, it's more about how you absorb the content and how it's applicable to real life scenarios and situations. It takes root in your mind. And when you find yourself in a similar scenario, whether you're at work or you're at a house party, a gathering of people that you know or don't really know that well, the scene will sprout and you'll make a connection back to what you watched, and it'll suddenly become funnier in context in real life than it did while you were watching it, because you tie it back to how the comedy takes real life scenarios that are awkward and shines a light on how weird those situations can be. The characters act in a way that you wish you could or fear you might act, and represents that on screen. And so while you're watching it, it might play out pretty straight in the show or again in this movie, but I can't help but laugh in those situations. And it's even better if you are in a situation like that with someone who has seen the show and who does appreciate that style of humor. It's unmatched how funny those situations can be, because it becomes this shared layer of language or experience over reality. And Friendship, using this style of comedy, is no different. And I think it's going to go down as being one of these really impactful comedies that last and linger in people's minds for years to come, because it does touch on so many different styles of scenarios that normal everyday people find themselves in all the time, whether it's at the workplace, party, in a social situation, at the mall, anywhere. There's a surreal, almost fever dream-like quality in Friendship that presents itself from the very beginning. Even before the first frame is shown, the music helps set the tone with this tribalistic sort of chanting that gives you an impression of something very visceral, deep-seated human desire, and I don't know where I'm going with that. The soundtrack goes a long way in setting the tone, and it's far from something you would hear in a typical comedy. It starts off tribal and visceral and evolves into a more atmospheric dreamscape-like soundtrack. It's reminiscent of other A24 movies like It Follows and Uncut Gems. It sounds more like something you'd hear in a psychological horror movie than a typical buddy comedy style movie. That contrast really works to hint at something deeper underneath all the chaos and cringe. The movie goes beyond the surface level examination of friendship to tap into the more visceral feelings of desire, fulfillment, yearning, disappointment, and desperation that often go along with friendships. Tim Robinson plays the main character of Craig, who is a typical weird, awkward, sad sack kind of guy who can't read a room, commits every social faux pas you've ever been afraid to commit. He can't stop himself from digging deeper into awkward moments that he gets himself into. Every time he has a chance for a genuine connection, he usually winds up blowing it. At one point in the movie, he convinces some of his coworkers to come over to his house for a boys' night.
Fellas, how we doing? Beers at my house this Friday. Heck yeah, I'll stock the fridge.
And he immediately makes the vibe weird. Earlier in the movie, he gets invited to hang out with Austin, his neighbor, played by Paul Rudd.
Are you Austin? Guilty.
Who becomes the object of his male friendship desire. Austin invites Craig over to meet some of Austin's friends, and he's completely hopeless in every chance that he gets to make a connection or to impress or try to land a joke. It just never works.
There's nothing to be nervous about. Just be yourself. You're a freaking prince.
It's painful to observe. Feels like you're watching someone who is incapable of existing in reality with other people as almost sort of like a science experiment. Of course, that's where a lot of the comedy is derived from, because it's funny to watch people flounder. Underneath that, and I think part of what makes the comedy so unique, is these scenarios play out in ways that you sometimes wish that you could, where you want to kind of just lash out if someone's not laughing at a joke that you were sure was going to land, or you're afraid that you're going to say something stupid and you reserve yourself or close yourself off in a social situation. The comedy takes what you're afraid of and puts it out on the surface. So it's hard to watch, but that's what makes it meaningful and what makes it work so well. I can only speak for myself, but there have definitely been times where I've been at a party or I've been in some social situation, even at work, where you want to interact and you want to connect with people, sometimes superficially, just by making a reference or telling a joke that you think is going to land, or by bringing up a topic that you think other people will resonate with and they don't, or you find yourself stuck in a conversation where other people are talking about things that resonate with all of them but don't for you. And you end up feeling like you're just window dressing. Ultimately, the viewer does have more information than the characters on screen do. Part of that comedy comes from feeling that resistance. But there's a separate layer from just looking at Craig as this hopeless guy who can't figure out how to get out of his own way. There's something early on in the movie that's established, and it's brought up a few times throughout, but it's easy to forget when you think back to this particular topic and you filter his behavior through this lens. There's a different angle that you can look at all of this through. And that's the fact that Tammy, Craig's wife, is in remission. The very first thing that we see Craig and Tammy do is spend time together at a cancer survivor support group. So we know that Craig is supportive of Tammy. She runs a floral business outside of their kitchen, which Craig is totally supportive of. Their home line is dedicated to Tammy's business to take orders. He helps her pack the car. He's portrayed as a very supportive husband and father figure to their teenager. And it's not outside the realm of possibility to consider that Craig spends his life in a mundane way where he doesn't have a lot of plans all the time.
Honey, the new neighbor invited you over for a drink at 8 tonight. I said you'd go.
You don't know my schedule.
You sit there every night.
On the surface, that joke is he's a loser. He doesn't do anything with his time. But again, if you look through the lens of him being a supportive figure for Tammy, it's not impossible to think that Craig is the way that he is because he wants to be a good supporter for Tammy. Craig suggests going to a Marvel movie.
There's a new Marvel out that's supposed to be nuts. We should go see that.
He's expressing something that he actually wants to do, which is not just sitting in his chair, doing nothing. Tammy and their son both reject his request and offer to go see this new movie because they have their own things going on. There is a contrast between Craig being portrayed as this loser character who has nothing going on and being rejected when he actually does offer a suggestion for something that he genuinely wants to do. So when you start looking at all of the ways that he commits all of these social faux pas, it's worth asking yourself, Is it because he's completely hopeless? Or are there other elements of his life that contribute to him being so awkward and cringe? Is he limiting himself so that he can be a better supporter for his wife and for his son? Is he rejected for having genuine interests in things that maybe people think are mundane or uninteresting? Yeah, maybe these are things that most people don't want to engage in, but they're things that he wants to do. And he has these interests. And he tells Austin that he's considered playing the drums, but he just never did. So it goes a little bit deeper than what's on the surface, I think. And that is why this style of comedy works so well. When Austin enters the picture, it becomes such a big revelation for Craig to be introduced to someone who is carefree and cool and who provides a window through which he can be more free and expressive about how he wants to be. So this is a spoiler for a particular scene that happens later on in the movie. If you want to avoid the spoiler, you can skip to some timestamp that I'll throw on the screen, but it's worth going into deeper detail about, because even though it is a joke that wound up getting the biggest laughs from the theater that I was in, it's much more revealing about the key elements and themes that are the reason for this movie existing in the first place. For various reasons throughout the movie, Craig constantly loses his phone and has to go to the cell phone store to buy a new one. He meets this cell phone store clerk who at first he invites out for beers, only to realize that the store clerk is actually only 18 years old. It's another one of these cringe moments where Craig can't even read the room well enough to understand that the person he's talking to is too young to be invited out to the bar. But the store clerk asks in, like, under his breath, he's like, oh, like, if you ever want anything more than beer, just let me know, because I can hook you up. After a string of bad luck where Craig is on the verge of a breakdown, he goes back to the store and tells the clerk that he's ready for something stronger than beer. He's offered to lick the venomous secretion from a toad. So he licks the toad in an attempt to have this transcendent, transformational trip. Instead of what we expect to happen, his trip consists of him going into a Subway. He orders a sandwich. Austin is behind the counter, and he's older and he has gray hair, so you don't know that it's him at first. He literally just orders a sandwich. The joke is that Craig is so unimaginative that he can't even trip in the right way. But I think that this interaction that he has that lasts for literally like a minute compacts all of this into a very succinct expression of what Craig actually really wants in life from a friendship. He walks in, orders a sandwich, gets told that the sandwich is a great choice. Austin is like, oh, foot long, right? Craig's like, yep, not toasted, right? And Craig's like, yeah, not toasted. Actually, you know what? Let's go wild. Let's get it toasted. And before you know it, the scene is over. The store clerk is standing over him, welcoming him back from his trip, asking him how it went. Did it feel like months or years? And Craig is like, no, it was like a minute. And it is a very funny scene. But again, when you think about how frictionless and fulfilling that experience is for Craig, that is a realization of everything that he really wants deep down played out in a very regular way, which I think is really revealing. Now, Craig is actually in his own way too much to realize that the trip that he had is more revealing of his deeper desires than he realizes. And so what's played out as a funny gag about him not being able to trip turns out to be, I think, one of the more meaningful scenes in the movie. Without going into too much detail about exactly how the movie ends, I want to touch on the culmination of the story and the lasting effect that it has as the credits roll. Austin is throwing a party at his place, and Craig joins that party without being invited. He winds up threatening the people there and finally unloading this frustration about why he was never accepted or why he was rejected without a chance for redemption and without anyone in the crew really taking any chance to get to know him on a deeper level so that they can understand his good qualities. Earlier in the movie, there's a reveal that happens about Austin that is really embarrassing and kind of goes against the ways his character is established that I won't spoil here. Craig knows about this embarrassing fact, and it's revealed again during this final scene where no one else at the party notices that it's happening except for Craig. So Craig doubles down on his outburst and keeps everyone from seeing Austin's embarrassing secret, even though Craig is bursting into this party and threatening everyone, digging himself deeper into this constant downward spiral that he's engaged in, he's still preserving this connection and this trust to hide this secret that they both know about. In the end, the result of Craig's actions at this party winds up getting him arrested. While Craig is sitting in the back of the cop car, he looks over at the party. He fantasizes about how it would have went down if everyone accepted him and if he was a normal part of the crew. But he locks eyes with Austin, who looks back at him. And even though Craig ruined the party, threatened everyone there, Austin still knows that he preserved that secret of his. And Austin gives him a wink. Craig's face lights up, the music swells, and the title of the movie reappears on the screen and the credits roll. Even though Craig loses everything, his family dynamics are turned upside down, he loses the chance to get accepted by Austin fully, but that wink at the end of the movie signifies something that he's been chasing the entire time. A genuine moment of connection where Austin is signaling to him, even outside of the awareness of everyone else, that he understands Craig and he is appreciative of Craig preserving that secret. And it's just this tiny moment that says, I see you. Whether or not that should be enough for Craig, among everything else that's gone wrong in his life, it's enough for him to feel satisfied. And that is what he's been chasing the whole time. And isn't that what all of us are chasing? Is just some validation for someone to say, I see you.